Hi, I'm Scott Jones, a bishop of the United Methodist Church, and I'd like to speak with you about the 23 amendments relating to the worldwide nature of our church that annual conferences will be voting on this spring and summer. As a bishop, it's not my place to tell you how to vote, but I want to put some information out there that will provide some background so that annual conference members will have an informed position and can choose whether to support the General Conference or to vote opposed to what the General Conference is offering you. I served as a member of the 6-person task force that developed the proposals that the Council of Bishops and Connectional Table amended and then strongly endorsed. These were proposals seeking to address a real problem in our church. We as the United Methodist Church are structured like we're a United States church with a few foreign outposts. As our missionary efforts have been successful, our worldwide nature is becoming more and more evident. A growing percentage of our members are living outside the United States. For 25% of United Methodists in the world, their main language is French, or at least they speak it in addition to their tribal language. We think it's time to live more fully into our worldwide nature. More than that, we think the Christian movement needs a worldwide Protestant church that's both diverse in its regions and yet united in the basics that hold us together. We believe our unity rests in our doctrine, our mission, and our discipline. I invite you to go to a website, www.worldwideumc.org, and read the report that went to the Council of Bishops and Connectional Table that gave rise to this legislation. You're being asked to take the first step in a long journey. The step is to amend our Constitution. Then a study committee, and by the way, I've been asked to chair that study committee, will bring enabling legislation to the 2012 General Conference to take the following steps. I think this is going to be a long journey, but the direction is clear. We're proposing, or the Council of Bishops and General Conference and Connectional Table are proposing, that every annual conference ought to belong to a regional conference, and that regional conferences ought to be subject to the unity imposed on the whole church by the General Conference. What constitutes our unity? Well, our doctrine has to be unified. You can't have United Methodists teaching different doctrinal principles like the Trinity in different places. Secondly, there are core aspects of our discipline that ought to be unifying us. Things like having bishops, ordaining women, other things like that. Thirdly, our social principles have got to have us as unified. Some people are suggesting and viewing these amendments as if somehow the issues of human sexuality, over which we've debated for the last 37 years, will be affected one way or the other. These amendments are completely neutral with regard to that. They will still be decided by the General Conference, and if the church ever changes, some hope they do, some hope they don't, but if that change ever comes, it will come by a majority vote of the General Conference in its regular session. Nothing in the amendments changes that. The third part is our sense of mission. I think we are united together, and we need a common interchange of ideas around all sorts of things like evangelism and stewardship, around social justice issues that bind us together as a worldwide church. Now, some of the amendments talk about a change in name from central to regional. That's simply a way of helping people understand that we have different regions of the country. Regional conferences will not be addressing doctrinal or social principles kinds of issues. Instead, they'll be addressing the issues that are relevant to their region. Starting churches in places in Africa is done very differently than it's done in the United States, for example. In Africa, there are places where lay people go out, start a new church, and then call the district superintendent and say, hey, send us a pastor. In the United States, we have a whole more complicated process for doing that. And we in the United States need ways of talking about it. Here's another anomaly. The hymnal that we published in 1989 is the official hymnal for the Congo. That doesn't make any sense. We need hymnals for the United States. We need other hymnals for regions of Africa. We need them for other parts of the world. One of the questions people are asking is, why are we doing this in stages? Why amend the Constitution now and do the implementation later? Frankly, when you amend the Constitution and do the implementation all at the same time, it gets really confusing. That's hard. The General Conference appointed a study committee, but gave that study committee guiding principles. Those principles delineate how this is going to work. And as chair of the committee, I promise you that we are going to be looking at those principles and following them to the best of our ability. The committee hasn't met yet, but that's my personal view, and I think that's the way it ought to go. Next, why do it now? This basic proposal first came before the General Conference in 1996. It was the Central Conference bishops who unanimously supported our proposal and unanimously said, you have to do something immediately. We have waited long enough. There are people putting the idea around that this idea didn't come from Africa or Europe or the Philippines. On the contrary, these ideas originated in a study committee that was chaired by a bishop from the Philippines, and it was the African bishops who were pushing we on the task force, pushing we members of the task force to have a proposal that was something like this. As a council of bishops, we sent it to the Central Conference bishops for their deliberation as a separate unit in their college, and they voted unanimously that we need to go forward and go forward with it now. The idea is also being put about that it creates a separate level of bureaucracy. That's not the case. There's no level of bureaucracy contemplated here. There is a regional conference contemplated, but the proposals call for that to take up some of the time that's now being spent in General Conference. It is so frustrating for people from Africa and the Philippines and Europe to spend hour after hour in General Conference or in general agency meetings talking about U.S.-only issues. They say, you Americans handle your U.S. issues. Let's talk about the issues that are truly worldwide. There's also the claim that this would allow for a judicial council in each region. That's not true either. There's one judicial council in our church. It's the only group that interprets the book of discipline for the whole church. Now, there might be groupings that talk about how each region does its work, but those are only for issues appropriate to that region. And in fact, it's the Judicial Council that helps to interpret our church's book of discipline and hold all of us accountable to that. My friends, there are people that I admire and respect who will be voting no on this. They are concerned. They would like more certainty. I understand that view. But there are lots of other people who are asking earnestly, how do we as United Methodists fulfill our calling? We are already a worldwide church. How do we live more fully into that vision so that where we're going to be in 2048 will look something like this? I think that's the issue. What should United Methodism look like in 2048? What is God calling us to do and be as a worldwide denomination, uniting people in Wesleyan Christianity in a single church with a single set of doctrinal standards, a single set of social principles, a single common discipline, and a mission to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world? I've written a book on the unity of the church. I'm deeply committed to it. I hope you'll consider all of these factors when you vote on the constitutional amendments later this year. Thanks for listening.